I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, I'm all you need. In the off-white Rari, baby, we run the streets. I'm a K-I-N-G, Westside royalty. I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, that's all you need. I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, I'm all you need.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Get It, and I'm your host, Stephen Basita, and today I have Emily Prada with me, and we're going to be walking through her journey a little bit here, and again, as we just continue to walk down women who are out there accomplishing things and creating their own way in the world and just continuing to give a voice to women as I continue my Woman Empowerment series here. So Emily, thank you so much for joining today. And so let's just dive right in and let's get into, walk us through what you're doing, how you got there, and your little journey, and what's in the future for yourself.
Okay, yeah. So I am currently a wedding photographer, and my husband and I also have our own spiritual community, also known as a church, but we're a lot more open-minded. We're obviously based on Christianity, but we're very open-minded. We do a lot of multi-faith stuff, so that's why I say spiritual community. But how we got to where we are, wow, that's a lot. So I originally picked up a camera when I was 14. I bought my very first camera, became obsessed with taking photos of everything. All of my friends, anywhere that I would go, I would just take my camera and take pictures. So everybody knew me as like the camera girl. Let's see, fast forward to high school. Well, I was in high school already when I was doing that, but to the end of high school, I never saw myself as doing photography as a real job, just because, you know, culture, society tells you that jobs like a photographer isn't like real. So I went to hair school during my high school year, my senior year of high school. So when I graduated with a cosmetology license and my high school diploma. So I went into doing hair for a while.
Okay.
Everyone kept telling me about how I needed to pursue like my photography. So I went on to pursue my photography again. Actually, this was a little bit after I got married to my husband. So when I married my husband,
how old were you?
I was 21. I had just turned 22, actually. Just turned 22. And I'm 28 now. So when we got married, I was leaving hair just because I didn't feel like that was like my forever type of thing. It was just like, I loved it, but I just didn't feel like it was like, I don't know. It just didn't feel right. So my husband started the church actually before I started my photography business. And I remember feeling like I didn't like have my own voice. I didn't have my own thing. I didn't know really, I was kind of like in that in-between phase where I didn't know like what my purpose was. What is it exactly that I'm doing? You know, which a lot of us go through. We have those moments where you're just like, I don't know where to go with my life. I don't know what I'm doing. So I started photos, fell in love with it. I obviously tried a bunch of different worlds in photography, fell in love with weddings just because I love love stories. I believe that love is the greatest gift that we all have, you know, and then especially being married, I love being married. So I've been doing that for, like 5 years now for wedding. And then we've been doing the church now for as long as we've been married. So 6 years.
Okay.
So yeah, here we are today.
So how did you and your husband meet?
We met at the gym.
Okay, good. That's a great spot to meet.
Yeah.
And so how old were you when you guys met?
How old was I? I think I was 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys met and you got married when you were 22. So you guys dated for how long before you got engaged?
Like a year.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Got engaged, got married, and started. So when you started doing your photography thing, how did you get started? And then you were still working your other job, and then when did this just turn into a full-time job for you? How have you gone about marketing yourself and stuff and building that business? And that's a full-time business for you now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How did I do that? Honestly, I'm a huge believer that like if you really, really love something and you're super passionate about it, you're gonna make it work, no matter what. So whenever I actually at the time I was working at a bikini for like a bikini line. We bedazzle like the bikinis that girls wear for like NPC competitions.
Okay.
So I would bedazzle all the bikinis. So that was my full-time job.
Okay.
So while I was doing that, I had already started photography on the side, and things just kind of like shifted to where I got so busy with my photography and the church that I was like, I can't do this. I can't bedazzle forever. I
Right.
also got what is it, tendonitis in my wrist from it. So I'm like, I can't keep doing this. But it was amazing. But I believe that at least for me, I give my 1,000% into everything that I do, and I loved what I was doing so much that it was kind of impossible for me not to succeed, you know? So
Okay. So as you're walking through all this stuff, so you're transitioning, you at this point have met your husband, you're doing your photography stuff, and through that journey of figuring out that the photography was the thing you're going to do, like what were some of the high points that you had, what were some of the low points you had, or the biggest struggles that you had while you were moving through this whole thing?
oh, I feel like that's an ongoing thing forever. Like all the high points and low points. That's literally, I feel like life. It's like up and then
Sure.
down, up and down. So when I was younger, we got to talk about this a little bit, but I actually dealt a lot with like depression.
Right.
So when I was younger, I got into like cutting myself, like just, I had a lot of lack of self-love, unworthiness, just, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I just felt like very different always.
Okay.
So growing up, that's always been one of my big challenges. I still have my moments, even though I try to focus a lot on positivity, just because I know what it's like to be on the other side of like negativity and stuff.
Right.
So I feel like that's been an ongoing struggle for me, just where it's easy to kind of like get sucked into that dark hole of like loneliness, unworthiness, depression. So what was the question again?
Oh no. So like through
Oh,
this
my
whole
low
thing,
points.
so yeah, some of those low points, some of the high points, and talking about the depression side of things. So when did you start going through depression and start cutting yourself?
I feel like that was probably when I entered high school, like probably like freshman year of high school. So like what, you're like 14, 15 around
Yeah.
then?
Right.
Yeah. I remember actually I had a surgery on my foot, and obviously they make you take pills. So I
Yeah.
feel like that kind of intensified a lot of like the emotions and feelings, and then that just kind of stuck with me. But
When did you stop cutting yourself? How old were you?
probably around like 19, maybe like a little bit after high school.
So it's a long time. So
Yeah.
what was it that, obviously I understand depression and I know that so many people struggle with that. What was it for you that got you started in cutting yourself? Like how did that even come about? And then what was the feeling that you got from it?
So it's funny because the older I get, the more I've been just like picking at my like past and like childhood and youth, and just kind of trying to make sense of things, because
Sure.
I remember I would tell people all the time, like, I don't even really know why. I don't understand why. Like, it's hard to understand from like another perspective why people would do that. You know, like, why would you hurt yourself? So the best way I can explain it now, as I've like been able to just kind of dissect it, is when people cut themselves, I feel like it's like a call for love. It's just, I think also too, I've always been very bad with my words. And then growing up, my family, we didn't really speak about our emotions at all. Like
Okay.
that wasn't really like a thing. The only emotion we talked about was about being strong.
Okay.
So mental health, obviously, my parents obviously they're incredible human beings. But, as parents, you're a parent, you're always doing the best that you can and with what you know, just like everybody else.
Right.
So, like I said, they mostly just taught me how to be strong. They didn't teach me how to deal with emotions, how to deal with loneliness, sadness. So I felt like, I guess at the time, that was me looking back now, that was my best way to show that was like my call for love, you know?
Okay. So you go through those 4 or 5 years, and were you still cutting yourself when you met your husband, or did you stop when you met your husband? I know you
No,
weren't your husband yet, but
yeah. Before, actually, I stopped before I met him. Yeah.
and what was
I was also in a like not so healthy relationship like before meeting my husband. So that probably also that didn't really help. You know, when you're not with somebody who like encourages you, empowers you, it's also very difficult. Because with my ex-boyfriend, actually, in my past relationship when I was younger, this didn't help. I competed in bikini competitions, and that's already so much pressure.
I know that's a lot.
That is like a lot. And then on top of that, the person that I was with, they didn't approve of it. So I remember he would always tell me like, oh, you look so disgusting. Like you're so skinny, like you're way too skinny. You have too many muscles. So like, tell that to somebody who already deals with like not feeling worthy enough. So like that just kind of like amplified like all of those feelings even more. And that's why I feel like my depression and just like sense of like belonging lasted for so long, which like I said, I still deal with the trauma, you know, like with not trauma, but like, you know, still like with those emotions today. But yeah, that's kind of how that continued.
That's a lot. I'm sorry. That's
Oh,
tough. You know, it's so I'm a girl dad. I have a daughter now, and I have another daughter on the way. And I grew up in a small town. Like I've got some experience having dealt with depression when I was younger. But my wife and I, I'm going to make this very short. We had a series of miscarriages in a year span.
yeah.
And we didn't both, you know, you don't realize you're going through depression when you're going through it. And then when you're both going through it separately and you're dealing with it differently, and then you're not really communicating stuff, it was a really challenging time. It was a challenging time in our marriage. We went and we've always been big proponents of going and doing like marital counseling, you know, like check-ins over the course of our marriage. But when we had a miscarriage back in September, we had twin boys and lost them. And so
Wow, that's tough.
and did marital counseling and, you know, find out that we're both depressed, and, you know, it's tough. It's a tough boat to be in. It's a tough thing to figure out, especially when you're in, especially for young people. Like we're older and have years of experience of life.
Yeah.
And so for us, you know, I look at like, because we're older and have all these years of experience, at least we knew what to do, which was now it's time that we go get help. Like we've gone through all this stuff.
Yeah.
Go get help. And the other thing too is like we lost our first, you know, we had our first miscarriage. And then you're dealing with the loss and the heartbreak of that. When we got pregnant with our daughter, Scarlett, we got pregnant the week we got off birth control.
Wow.
So it was quick.
Wow.
And we just assumed this is how it's always going to be. And then when we started working on getting pregnant the second time, it took like 9 to 10 months before we even got pregnant.
Wow.
Have a miscarriage. You're dealing with that heartbreak and loss. Then we get pregnant again. Then we lose that pregnancy. Then we get pregnant again, lose that pregnancy. Then we get pregnant again. You know, and so all this happening so fast. And for us, just, you know, you're excited and then you're heartbroken, and then you're excited and you're heartbroken, and you're still dealing with not processing. You know, I don't even know, even to this day, it's hard for me to even talk about it. I'm not an emotional person, but like I super emotional because it's so hard.
Yeah.
And I think like the saving grace right now is we're like 13 weeks into our pregnancy with our new daughter here. Everything's been smooth the last couple weeks. We had a couple of bad weeks, but everything's running smooth, and that excitement, you know, but still trying to figure out, you know, and I don't know how, you know, I can't speak for my wife at all, but for me personally, still trying to figure out how to deal with the loss of all of those pregnancies, because, you know, those were our kids that we wanted to meet. Clearly didn't happen. So it's weird. But, you know, we weren't kids. You know, for kids, it's and young people, it's so challenging, you know, and do
Well,
crazy things.
I I feel like yes, but I feel like it could equally be as difficult for an adult too, because not all adults know to go and seek help, or
That's
they
true too.
or they think that that's like a sign of weakness to go and ask for help, or like also too, yeah, exactly, like society and culture. It's getting better now about how
Way
important
better
mental
now.
health is, thank God, because everybody I believe, like almost everyone should see a therapist or talk to people about their feelings, because
Right.
most human beings grow up not knowing what feelings and emotions are,
Yeah.
and how to what do they mean, what
Yeah.
do they all mean, what do they all like do. Also too, we learn to identify with our emotions,
Right.
which is, I think, a big downfall with humans, that we all need to learn that we are not our emotions. Our emotions are just they're just emotions. They're not who we are. So we learn to identify with them, like I did when I was younger. I had depression, feelings of depression. So
Right.
I would say I'm a depressed person, but I'm not a depressed person. I'm a loving, beautiful, kind, incredible person. So I think it can equally be as hard,
Yeah.
just depending.
Yeah. All right. So you're okay. So you have a lot on your plate. So you're going through. So you're in a bad relationship. You're cutting yourself. You're in a bikini fitness competition. Now I am a strength coach, and I have had people go through the bikini competitions and stuff. I also am an ex MMA fighter, and so
Okay.
I've gone through the, you know, cutting weight before the final day where you shed 10 to 15 pounds of water weight. Like, I know what all that's like. It sucks.
It
And
does.
you're throwing a lot of things into the fire there all at once.
Yeah.
So how did you prepare for your bikini competition? A, having a negative boyfriend who keeps ripping into you. You're depressed, you're cutting yourself, and you still managed to do it. How did that whole thing go for you?
You know, I will say, looking back, I have learned so much from it. Just because, like I said, that I think this takes me back to being raised to be a strong woman.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm very grateful for this. I even still am like this to this day, where I stand my ground. If I want to do something, I'm gonna do it. If I want something, I'm gonna get it. Like if it's in a healthy way, because I didn't think there was anything wrong with competing in, bikini
Right.
competition. For me, it was like a goal I wanted to achieve. I actually ended up doing 2 shows, which,
Okay.
it was a great stage in my life. I'm grateful for it. Would I do it again? No, of course not. But I do have that like willpower in me, where I'm like, you know what, like no matter what people say, I'm gonna stand my ground. And that's actually led me into where I am today, becoming this pastor's wife, which I hate being called a pastor's wife, because
Why?
anytime somebody knows that I'm a pastor's wife, the judgments and accusations start coming, and I'm put in a box and I'm labeled.
Okay.
So, and I don't believe in labeling people, putting people in boxes just because of like what they do. You know what I'm saying? Or because like who they married, or because of,
So
you
let
know,
me ask you a question real quick. So my wife and I are Christians,
yeah.
and I've been in ministry. I've been a missionary earlier, much earlier in my life, and I've lived in other countries that were very poor, and I've been treated very poorly. Obviously, I stand out like a sore thumb wherever I am. I'm a 6'3" white guy with red hair, and it wasn't always this short. I keep it short now because it's easy to maintain. But I used to have longer hair, and it would like go down to like my eyes. And it
Oh
was
my
long.
God.
It was bright red. It's gotten a lot darker over the years, but you know, so I understand where you're coming from, but I also look at it like that's a great opportunity too, right? Because it's a great opportunity where you can really have conversations that help transform people's
Definitely. Oh,
opinions,
1,000%. 1,000%.
right?
I am very, very grateful for where I am and the people that I'm able to impact and touch. I just I just don't like that label, like I said, because then, I mean, I feel like I'm in a very healthy place now, and it's just, I think it's a lot of that comes from the beginning of marrying my husband, and like a lot of the churches that we went to, it was always like, oh, because I had red hair at the time too. it was like, you have red hair, like, oh, like why are you wearing that? Like my husband didn't get jobs because of me. So that does something to someone, whenever, like, I remember my husband telling me, like, I didn't get this job, like, and I was like, what do you mean? Why didn't you? Like, it was perfect. You're perfect for the job. And then I remember he like didn't even want to tell me, but he ended up telling me, like, yeah, they just didn't think you were pastor's wife material. So that broke my heart, because I remember this one church that we were going to. I changed my entire wardrobe. I went with my mom and my mother-in-law, and we bought like a whole new like dress jackets for women, like long dresses. Like, I don't dress like that, but I tried my best to fit in, and it still wasn't good enough. So bottom line, I just believe that everybody should be themselves, and everybody should be given the freedom to be themselves, because I believe that being yourself is the greatest gift that we can all offer to this world. Sure. So I love being a pastor's wife.
I understand both sides of that argument, though. I understand what it's like being in your shoes. My uncle's a pastor.
Okay.
And I come from a really just very conservative family. So I get both sides of the argument. I understand the side of the argument of, like, you should be able to be yourself. Like, all my tattoos, it's funny because you said stand your ground. I have a tattoo that says stand your ground on my chest. But all my tattoos are all sleeve length. If I don't want you to see it, you're not going to. And it comes back to, like, when me and my wife go back home, my mom and dad are very active in the church. And the church that they're part of has a very firm stance that they don't really like tattoos. Now, my tattoos are mostly faith-based. I am a Christian. I'm a practicing Christian. I engage in those conversations all the time, but me and my wife, we live our lives that way because we understand it's a relationship and we live in that relationship. But, like, everything, I go home, I go to church, you'll never see my tattoos. If everything's covered up, I wear, like, longer. I mean, I'm kind of in a shorter sleeve t-shirt right now, which is why you can see the one on my arm, but it's of a cross, and it's Jesus Christ's blood going into our sins. So it's like black on the bottom and red on top. It says freed. Okay. So it's the Christ of, Jesus Christ's blood freeing us from our sins. Like, you can't get more, like, that's a pretty good little thing. And I don't promote, I don't show any of that stuff because it'll fall down on my parents. And I'm, like, almost 40 years old, and my parents would still get, still people, because it's the older, unfortunately, and this is not a shot at people that are older, but they're just very stuck in their ways and have a very, like, they're stuck in their ideology, and it will negatively impact my parents. And so I've always, like, and my wife, like, she's like you, like, I don't, she likes to wear whatever she wants to wear. And I don't care, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, she's not walking around in super risque things, but, she's had to do a little bit of that too. Like, especially because I'm also a coach at a Christian school, a basketball coach. Yeah. And so, she definitely dresses very nice and modest, which is good. But yeah, I get it. I get both sides of the argument. I understand why people feel the way that they feel about it. And I get why,
Yeah.
It's tough. It's a tough boat to be into. And it sucks because I have a daughter with another one on the way. And it's just like wanting to let them know that no matter what, they're worthy and loved. Yeah. But I'm also a man, and I understand, like, men's biggest struggle is visual, right? Like, women are emotional, like, you connect emotionally, and that's what is your guys' is a lot of times your kind of like driving force. For men, it's a visual thing, and trying to have a balance there and giving them the trying really hard not to be, like, critical and judging, and be like, it's not a big deal. But that the other end of the stick is like, well, when my daughters start to get older, I know what young men are thinking. And it's like, that's like the one thing I wrestle with now.
I will say this. It shouldn't, if your daughter or if any woman, I think at the end of the day, it's about intention. What is your intention behind the way you're dressing, what you're doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think if your intention is good, then you're good. the other person's story, that's their issue, I think. I think if we all cared about ourselves and our insides and our hearts and our intentions and our what we're trying to do in this world, then this world would be so much of a better place if we stopped pointing the finger.
Oh, I 100% agree. There's no disagreement at all. I 100% agree with what you said. The one struggle, though, is that you may not have a bad intention, and you may be like, this is what I'm comfortable in and stuff. But, it goes back to, well, if you're causing someone to struggle, right, then are you fulfilling what your purpose is and edifying your relationship with Jesus, right? Because there's that scripture that talks about that specifically. And that's the piece that's always utilized on that flip side of the argument, right? Because like for me, and for women, it's not like women are walking around like, ooh, that guy's look at him in those sexy board shorts, all his legs look so, it's like, it's
I mean, some I've seen some.
Sure, some are, but like it's more of a guy-centered thing than a girl-centered thing, right? And so there's just it's unfortunate because there's always going to be that point of struggle or contention or like disagreement or whatever you want to say. So, I love being a girl dad. I'm very excited for meeting the new little girl, and we're gonna have a lot of fun with it. And it's just like constantly trying to just make sure I love my daughters, make sure I invest in my relationships with them. And me and my daughter, Scarlett, we have a really, really good relationship. We're like, my wife and her do a lot of this headbutting, but me and her, man, we just have a really special bond, which has been
awesome. Really, and that's gonna impact her life so much because I'm definitely like daddy's girl. My dad is like my best friend. Even now being older, now I'm like, you're my best. Like I let him know so much. Like I just love you so much. Like thank you for because I know because he was like there for me, my whole life. And like I don't know, I just have that special bond and connection with my dad because of the love he's always given me. So that's gonna for sure impact her down the road, always.
So having said that, so this is gonna bring it back to previous thing. So then when you were going through the phase of cutting yourself, was your dad aware of it? And was that in any way in relation to your guys' relationship at the time? Because like, look, my parents and I are however, we had a real bad relationship from the time that I was like in the middle of 7th grade until probably maybe like my late junior year in high school, because my parents lied to me. It's a separate story for a separate day, but because of that lie, they caused my life a horrendous turn. And it really is such a long story, but the shortest version of it is I grew up in the hood. Gangs were a very big thing. I went to my parents with something about a close friend of mine that I was asking for advice on and asked them to stay out of. And instead, they didn't. And so then I was viewed as a snitch.
Oh my
God. I'm already a tall, white, redheaded kid in the hood. That's not good. Then I'm a snitch on top of that, which is also not good. My life was horrendous for so long, and there were a lot of negative turns that took place. I ended up having to get involved in the gang because of this down the road, and it was just a bad, tumultuous. So our relationship took a horrible hit, and then later in life, when I got late at high school and then early college, things ended and stuff. But
so I will say that I feel like this happens with almost every teen. When you become a teenager, it's like mom and dad are trying to tell you what to do. And, you're rebellious. You're like, no, I don't want to. So I feel like that was kind of me as a teenage girl, just a rebellious phase where I kind of did whatever I wanted. I like being close to your parents isn't cool in high school. So most kids kind of stray away from their parents. So yeah, during those years, I obviously still loved my mom and dad, but mom and dad were just the people that told me like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. And as a teenager, that's really all you see in your parents. Obviously, now that's why I admire my dad, my mom and dad, but that's why I'm like, I tell my dad so much, like, I love you. I'm so sorry for like how I was mean. And, you know, because a lot of teenagers, they're mean to their parents when you're in that stage because they're just telling you, no, you can't go to that party. No, you can't sleep over that friend's house. Meanwhile, all your friends are doing everything. So my parents didn't really know for a long time actually about me cutting myself. It was my brother who caught me. My brother found out and he went and told my parents and my siblings, and yeah. So that's how that happened.
Okay, fair enough. Wow. All right. Well, that's a lot. Yeah, I'm hoping that I know that those days are coming. I know it's going to be challenging. I'm hoping that we still are good and my daughters are still like daddy little princesses through that time. Because man,
yeah, it's
another thing too is my daughters. I got what I prayed for, which in retrospect I would have always prayed the same prayer, but I don't necessarily know. I thought through it well, which was I prayed for a little girl that would look just like mommy. I married up. For people that don't know, my wife is a 10. I got super lucky. And when people see my wife, they tell me I married up. And I fully acknowledge I married up. I got really lucky. She's gorgeous. So my little girl looks exactly like mommy, and mommy is gorgeous. I'm just like, oh, this is going to be a really challenging, like 14 to like
it's a good
20
thing, but yeah,
hard.
Yeah, it's a good thing, but it's, yeah. Me and my husband talk about all that all the time. I'm like, man, I hope our kids like are good whenever that time comes for us. But you can never know. All you can really do is just love them and embrace every moment and
no, definitely
hope for the best.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, you know, so we've gone through a lot of your specific journey here. What would be some words of wisdom for people that are listening, and also people, if they want to reach out to you and ask you questions, how can they get a hold of you and follow your journey?
So I would say my words. That's a good question. I would say be true to who you are. Always follow your heart. I think that all of the answers are within us. I'm a strong believer that God lives inside of each and every one of us. So I believe that that's our guide. You know, like that feeling, like that like feeling that you always get when you should do something, like you should call somebody, you should, I don't know, to do the right thing. I feel like that's like that spirit of God that's within us. So I feel like always just listening to that inner guide that's within you. Being yourself always is so important because, like I said earlier, I think being yourself is probably one of the greatest gifts that you can offer to this world. All voices are incredible, beautiful, amazing. I think, just being yourself, following that inner guide, and I think everything else really just flows from there. And then how can people follow me and keep up with me? So I have my personal social media, which is at Prada_Emily. There I just kind of post like a lot of positivity and like things about our church, which is heartwaychurch.com, and then the social media is at Heartway Church, and then my photo page is Emily Prada Photo.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us and being on the show today and giving us a small glimpse of your journey and all that, the things that you've gone through to get to where you are. Again, I'm a huge fan of hearing about the journey and how people got to where they are, because that's why you are the person that you are. I appreciate the time so much. And for all you listeners, thank you so much. You're with Stephen Basita on my podcast, Get It, on the Social Nostra Network. And we're looking forward to seeing you on the next time.
Thank you.